Is AI hyped, or is it like the faucet in the men's change room, overly complicated and just doesn't work? Last week I was lucky enough to be at the Built Worlds conference in Atlanta. This brought together people from the construction industry talking about tech. Tech, construction, do they really go together? Well, one company suggests they do, especially some AI tools that they were bringing to market. They claim that they can solve some of the biggest problems that have been emerging in the construction industry and are only going to get worse. That company is Trunk Tools. One of the big problems facing the construction industry is simply the volume of documentation that is required to carry out a construction project. They use the example of a New York building. Let's not call it a skyscraper, but just a large building. How many documents are required to undertake such a project? Now, I asked several of my friends and they said 1,000. I kept going up, 10,000, 100,000, million. Well, it turns out 3.5 million documents. Now, to put that into perspective, if you could read one of those documents every minute, which is extremely fast, it would take you 14 years of your life working 8 hours a day to read every single one of those documents. This is a huge problem. Can you employ a team of people, an army of people, to understand and digest all of that documentation? Or is there some way that AI can really help? And this is what Trunk Tools claim to be able to do. They have built, over the last few years, an AI system that can not only read documents, but also drawings. In fact, it's the drawing reading which is one of the key parts of their intellectual property. And the CEO said to us that if you think you can build a model that reads drawings, then think again, because it's going to be a lot more than just $2 million to build such a model. But they've built it. They've also been able to incorporate some really good tools to make it easy for people to interact. And one of the simplest ways to interact with this tool is simply by sending a text message. The AI grabs that, it's an agent if you like, grabs that, goes and searches and returns. So let's imagine a specific example of, say, a junior engineer coming from the project office down to talk to one of the contractors. Now the contractor might say, well, I don't think I need to do that. It's not part of my contract. It might be something like removing the drywall waste, something like that. It's not part of my contract. Now this junior engineer might find himself in a bit of a difficult spot here. On the one hand, he's got all these documents. Can he find a particular clause in the contract? And also he's probably going to feel a little uncomfortable being up against the contractor when he's quite junior. Well, their tool enables him to very quickly send a text and the response back is almost immediate, and it gives direct quote out of the specific clause and contract of relevance. One of the key questions that they were asked, and I'm often asked when I'm talking about this company and this solution, is how can we rely on the responses given by that tool? So we're all familiar with using ChatGPT, and it's notorious for returning a response which sounds believable, but can actually be completely wrong. Trunk Tools and many others that are doing something similar like this and mining lots of data in a closed environment use a thing called a RAG, which stands for Rapid Augmented Generation. So it's a little bit like ChatGPT in that it is trained as a large language model, but it is confined. It's only allowed to search and return responses based on the data in that data set. So it can only respond to what is actually there written in the documentation. And also it actually presents links specifically to those documents and quotes directly from them. So in a way there is some certainty. It's not that there's 100%, and of course quality of responses is one of the big challenges with AI, but Trunk Tools claim to have a very high quality of good responses to those requests. So what is the economic benefit of having this tool used on a construction site? Well, of course, we're overcoming some of the complexity. So there is an obvious benefit that perhaps you don't need as many people to read and review the documents because you now have access to all that documentation literally at your fingertips in seconds. So rather than having teams of people who understand all the documentation, there's a channel to that documentation that allows very quick retrieval so that really any single person has access to it all, which means that you could cut down your workforce Also, it reduces the risks. As we said before, having somebody out in the field with access to that information means they get their hands on the right information at the right time, reducing the costs of mistakes, whether they be contractual or physical, or literally going down the wrong path with the wrong information. So all of that creates a huge amount of benefit. But one of the other big problems that the industry is facing is the lack of skilled workers. They anticipate that 20% of the skilled labour force will be leaving the industry in the next 3 to 5 years, and they're not being replaced. There aren't new people coming in to the industry like they used to. So there's a brain drain in this industry. What's appealing about this technology is it engages young people who are used to technology and will use technology, and helping them to be almost as equally skilled, in some cases more skilled, than the skilled people whose jobs they are replacing. This company demonstrated how AI tools can be applied to a problem which has been getting worse and will continue to get worse, and how we can use this AI, RAG, agentic technologies to really overcome that and really get out in front and start to turn the costs down instead of continuing to go up. But this is a general problem. We're seeing this occur more and more. There is more and more data being generated across many different fields. Hawkeye, for example, has the ability to catch data at 10 to 30 frames a second, hundreds of data points. That is probably quite useless if we just dump it into a cloud server and leave it alone. But if we run some RAG type technologies and some agentic tools on there, we can really start to extract useful data. If you're riding Hawkeye around the streets, you'll be collecting data about where there's traffic, where there's pedestrians, where you're going in time and space. And this can build up things like cloud maps, but also with agentic technology, you can ask it specific questions. Based on the riding data that I have, what was the safest route? What was the least traffic? If I went at these times, how would I be safest? How would I be able to navigate easiest? What would be the route that I took where I was less in danger? Those kinds of things are the future of adding Hawkeye type AI vision technologies to this back-end AI data type technologies. I'm going to leave a bunch of links in the description to the companies and technologies that I've discussed. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the description. We always like to hear from you and we'll answer those questions as best we can. Also, if you have any suggestions for videos you'd like us to make, we'll consider those too. I hope that was helpful, and thanks for watching.